Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you all. Denise, I see you. Good morning. Hi there. We're going to be reviewing Chapter 7, Seeing More Clearly, this Tuesday morning. This is Chapter 7 of 8 chapters. We will be doing Chapter 7 or 8 next week. I'm not sure. We'll see how we do with this one. And then going from there. I do want to, I'm going to see if I can't get a little better picture of you guys. I'm a bit in the woods over here. Let's see if I can make this happen. I'm going to check in. We've got some people still coming in, and I just want to make sure before I begin that everybody is on mute. For now, we will talk later. And so I wrote there in chat, I don't know if you could see that. And before I even speak to that, I think it'd probably be a good idea if I wrote here in chat regarding Chapter 7, From Real Change by Sharon Salzberg. This is the book we've been exploring together. I wrote, we will be investigating seeing more clearly. Can we begin, I came out wrong, to see our true selves? Can we begin the seeing more clearly by beginning to see our true selves? Not the self of size, weight, shape, gender, race, ideas about self, identities related to self. And until then, what we know for sure is that you cannot begin to see the perceived other. Until then, until you see the size, the shape, the weight, the gender, the race, these identities of self, who you really are and who you really are not, it will be impossible to see the truth of the other. Does that make sense to anybody? Can you get the idea that seeing clearly, this idea in the Noble Eightfold Paths laid out for us very distinctly, and we will be studying those next in a book called A Whole Life Path. Here it is, by Gregory Kramer. This is going to be our next book, not quite like this one. This is very much more specific around certain teachings, as well as how do we live them? How do we live these then in very real, practical, daily ways? But one of the beginnings of the Eightfold Path is something called right view. We could say wise perspective. We could say clear seeing, seeing things as they really are. And the neuroscience says, if you don't know anything about the true size, weight, shape, gender, sex, race, all those identifiers of yourself, the greatest truth of these, you will A, suffer. We know about this already. B, you will mistake. You will find mistaken or false identity. And you will then take that very view, that very perspective, and mistake others. You will judge them by those very characteristics upon which you have judged yourself. And that bias, that prejudice, that blind spottedness costs us all. Costs us all. Why? Well, because when we don't see the truth of our impermanence in body, the truth of our interconnectedness of being, we will not act, think, speak rightly, that it actually is not possible. So hopefully that makes some kind of sense to you. I see several of you on, so rather than go rushing forward, I think I'll stop there and see if anybody has a thought about that before we dive into the practice. Maybe you will help me decide how best we might approach this. Any thoughts about what I've said so far? Your own thoughts about this? Seeing clearly who we really are? You can chat or just come off of mute and join. Thoughts about this? Do we see where some of our illusions, delusions lie? Right? There was a particular koan, K-O-A-N, a particular koan written in the chapter 7 that I thought was a beautiful way to begin to investigate these very assumptions, these very habits of ours, these very limited view. Let me go see if I can't find it quickly. It looked like a type of riddle. Oh, here it is. The riddle goes like this. A father and his son were in a car accident. The father dies at the scene. The boy, badly injured, is rushed to a local hospital. In the hospital, the operating surgeon looks at the boy and says, I cannot operate on this boy. He's my son. How can this be? How can this be? Did anybody remember that particular, if you read chapter 7, did anybody read that particular riddle, again called a koan in the Zen tradition? Did anybody struggle with it initially before you went to look for the answer? Did anybody go, wait a minute, how could that be? Beautiful, Andy, glad to hear. Yes, Dennis, thank you. Dennis wrote, to see clearly is to be so still your soul resonates, clear seeing. Resonates, clear seeing, the light of clear seeing, the light of awareness, the light of right view, we could say in this tradition. And in fact, that koan is so perfect, especially if you were born in the 40s or 50s, because what? Once upon a time, all surgeons were men. Once upon a time, this was a truth. And so if you came with any of that bias, what you discovered was, oh, how could that be? And you went into a spiritual realm or metaphysical realm, or you went, oh, it wasn't the father, it was the adopted father. I don't know if any of you did that at all. And I loved their additional commentary on that particular koan, because what they said is nowadays, someone might simply say, oh, that was their other father. Because of course, now we have so widened, expanded necessarily and beautifully, whatever your perspective is not the point, the identities of families to include two fathers who may be married, two mothers, a mother and a father, a mother and a father and others, more than two, different genders, different races. And of course, as we unknot the bias, what do? We struggle. We struggle. And so there is a place in there somewhere for each of you uh, truth telling or not, where you go, oh, I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know about this idea of those kind of gendered parents and these kind of sexual identity parents, or these transgender parents, or these racially. I remember once, as I first became a therapist, by the way, having a biracial couple as my first, one of my first family therapy clients. I talk about being out of the water and out of my mind with how to help these people begin to work with their biracial children in Hammond, Indiana. Let me tell you, that was a trick because there was no way yet. There was no path carved. We were going to be carving it out of our own courage and out of our own recognition for how to begin to help this family and these children begin to be integrated into a world that was at that time, particularly in Hammond and Gary and East Chicago and Highland, Indiana, divided by strong, rigid, fixed lines. Actually, I won't tell you the solution, but maybe you will guess what might have happened. So with that, we're going to find our way to practice. I'm going to check chat one more time just to make sure we're not saying something that I need to attend to right away. Yes, this negativity bias. I wish it were just negative, right? It is other perceiving. It is delusional. It is so limited, so fixed, so entrained in us. And for any of us to say it is not true is dangerous. For any of us to say that it is not true is dangerous. The best we can say is that we will work on it and that we can work on it together. But be careful because I remember a time myself where I too proudly, too arrogantly would have said, but I'm not a racist, living in a dramatically racist, sexist, gender identity biased, ethnicity biased world. And then the question is, how could it be so? How could it be so? And so we're going to investigate that otherness. And I'm thinking we might want to take this in two parts, because where did I begin? I began with, if you do not know something about that in yourself, I think moving to investigating the bias we hold towards others becomes shrouded in denial or in wanting to look a certain way. And so I thought we might begin with a little bit of that inquiry with ourselves and who we mistake ourselves to be. And we'll see where it takes us. Yes, we get right. I have made this mistake with in transgender relationships as well, Dennis. Not that you were making the mistake. I have made the mistake by being even overly curious about who was it? Is it a male or a female? As if the binaries were correct. Was it once this and now that, or did that, or and is it really all that, or this, or part of that, or that, in a really destructive way? Ridiculous. But understanding with some compassion my own in training, again, my own confusion, my own fear, my own, well, then how do you know which bathroom to go into? And then the whole order of things gets hosed up, and not recognizing that always. And of course, as a result of that, doing damage. As a result of that confusion in myself. I am what I do, Victor says, until you cannot do it. And then who are you? Even in the idea of doing something rightly, if we are what we do, what happens then when we can no longer do by virtue of, today I'm going to be walking today. So today I could say I am a walker until the day I can't. And then who am I? And then who am I? And so we're going to do a little investigating of that. I picked this poem by Joy Harjo, who is Indigenous peoples poetess, advocate, activist. And I liked something about this because she was asking some of these very questions about herself, I think as who she had been assigned in some ways to be as an Indigenous person. And so I thought I'd read this and then we'll sit together. I was on a train stopped sporadically at checkpoints. What are we checking? What tribe are you? What nation? What race? What sex? What unworthy soul? I could not sleep because I could not wake up. No mirror could give me back what I wanted. That's a very important line. No mirror could give me back what I wanted. What was she seeking? I was given a drug to help me sleep, another to wake up. Then a drug was given to me to make me happy. They all made me sadder. Death will gamble with anyone. There are many fools down here who believe they will win. You know, said my teacher, you can continue to wallow, or you can stand up here with me in the sunlight and watch the battle. I sat across from a girl whose illness wanted to jump over to me. No, I said, but not aloud. I would have been taken for crazy. We will always become those we have ever judged or condemned. We will always become those we have ever judged or condemned. This is not mine. It belongs to the soldiers who raped the young woman on the Trail of Tears. It belongs to Andrew Jackson. It belongs to the missionaries. It belongs to the thieves of our language. It belongs to the Bureau of Indian Affairs. It no longer belongs to me. I became fascinated by the dance of dragonflies over the river. I found myself first there. I became fascinated by the dance of dragonflies over the river. I found myself first there. We're going to reflect on that. And here's a thought by Mary Oliver. Who are you? They called out at the edge of the village. I am one of you, the poet called back. Though he was dressed like the wind, though he looked like a waterfall. I am one of you. And so we will sit. So let's prepare, finding a supported, as best you can, upright posture. I think I never know, right? You can never know the right way into a practice. But we can begin here and like this. And so just beginning to incline the mind towards the body sensations as they are arising and passing in this vast open space. We're not going to take claim of this body, this temporary dwelling. We are, though, going to turn towards what it offers us. And right now we can turn our attention towards the felt sense of this being human in this body as we sit here, breathing. We find a moment of stillness, Dennis said, through which the light can shine through. You may notice the sense of the weight of the body, maybe a sense of its perceived limits or borders, the space where you perceive yourself to begin and end. And space begins and ends, and it is already false. More of you in this very moment is off the chair than on it by virtue of the reality of bouncing atoms. And yet it feels so solid. Can we turn towards this sense of solidity with inquiry, with curiosity, rather than taking it to be true? And though we cannot completely know this human body in its ever-changing form, atom by atom, cell by cell, hair by hair, we can know this. We can know the aspirations we hold to cause least harm, to contribute and be of benefit, and to do so not only for ourselves, not only for those we love and those we know, but for who? All those just like me, sitting here. All those just like me, breathing. All those just like me, setting the aspiration to be happy, to have ease, to be well. And so we practice together. Just like this. And with the strike of the bell, rather than move more towards the body, which is a typical practice, we're going to actually try something else. I'm going to ring the bell again. We're going to see if we can't move the attention and awareness with it out into that open space, following the sound. And as the attention widens from the front to the back, side to side, above and below, we can expand and open that attention so wide that what we can make contact with is, rather than a small piece of perceived reality at all, We rest in the open space that is still and silent and free of all characteristics, completely free. You might say resting awareness in the open space of awareness itself. And often we come to know this awareness by the objects that rise and pass within it. You might say in contrast. And so we see the mountain by the space around it. We perceive this body by the space in which it sits. And in the holding of both, the perceived mass, which is, by the way, mostly space, and space itself. You can feel the body expanding and contracting as it breathes, inviting that space in and exchanging. Where does the space begin and end? And do you imagine that it ends at this thin, porous, filled with space border of skin? That I am here and space is there. Illusion. Can we rest in the open space, awareness already abiding, and let that perceived sense of self and otherness begin to dissolve? And we often imagine, don't we, that salt beginning to dissolve in that warm broth, no longer knowing the salt from the broth itself. And so with each out breath, we begin to dissolve the bias. First, by letting that skin surface dissolve away, the surface that perceives to say me and otherness. And we notice that awareness remains. Awareness with no skin. And in fact, we know it to be true. Awareness requires no boundary, in fact, cannot be limited by any boundary, any border, any limited definition. In fact, as we release this idea of me in this skin, by letting the skin itself simply dissolve, the awareness appears to grow larger. Though not true, we're no longer held by the limit. Me, this skin. And then we might dissolve the hair on the top of the head, the hair in the body. It should have already come off with the skin, but let's remove it. Often we can entrain gender simply by the length of one's hair. Let it dissolve. And see, as the hair dissolves, as we no longer have hair, see if we notice that awareness has not been limited. No longer judging self or other by hair. No longer judging self or other by skin. Now what? We rest in the vast, open, limitless space of awareness itself. No skin color, no skin, no hair. And then we could dissolve the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth. No longer judging ourselves by colors of eyes or the things we hear. Maybe not by the things we smell or the size of the nose, the shape of the nose, or the face. Letting that with each out-breath begin to fall away. Who am I now? Who is the other? And then we could begin to dissolve the body, the size, the weight, the shape of the body. Remember, the atoms are doing their atom thing, bouncing up and down. So the truth is, you don't even weigh the same from moment to moment, not really. Maybe you could let the arms and the legs fall away, dissolving like salt in that broth. Who am I now? Who is the other? Can we rest in awareness? Strong arms, strong legs, big ones, small ones, long ones, short ones. Ones with all the fingers and toes and ones without. They all dissolve into the same sea, into that vast ocean of awareness. And then we could dissolve even the torso, the chest, the breasts, the genitals, the waist, letting all of that dissolve away. Who are we now? As we rest in that vast and open, boundless sea of awareness. I am not my face, I am not my body. I am not these eyes, these ears, this nose, this mouth. I am not this sex, I am not this race. I am not this hair. Letting it dissolve into that vast, open character, signless, ageless, birthless, and deathless shape of awareness. And if I am not this body, I am not where this body was born. Whether we're from one continent or another, there is no barrier. There is no boundary, just conditions arising and passing, cold or warmer, green or brown. There's land and sea, and they are a part of each other. Can we let go of the identity of this certain place and just become a part of the earth? Are we a certain country, a certain language? Can we let those two dissolve in that vast warm broth? Can we then dissolve our preferences, our bias? Can we not judge or identify ourselves by what we like and what we don't? And see them as ever changing conditions. We can let these melt and dissolve too. Non-biased. No preference. Who are we now? Could we dissolve our histories? Letting them be breathed out, no longer limited. Me like this. Me not like this. Could we dissolve our heritage, our names? Letting all of falsity fall away. Held by the earth and the oceans and wind. Radiated by the sun. And then we simply rest. Nothing to hold up, nothing to hold on to, nothing to limit, nothing to lose. We simply rest then as awareness itself. No age, no color, no country, no gender, no preference, no bias, no history, no sought future. We rest in this vast identity, taking no claim. As Mary Oliver says, I am then the wind in the waterfall. Continuous change, taking form and not form, but being limited by none. And then with the truth of this, who is the other? And how do we define them? If we are not our skin, our hair, if we are not our sex or gender, if we are not what we do, how we work, what we say, then what are we? And what is the other? If not the same. And can we just allow ourselves to rest in this vast claim of no one? No body, no being, just presence. And then where would the struggle be? If we did not grasp and we did not cling and we did not crave identity and the thing. We would simply be the characteristics of awareness itself, birthless and deathless, colorless, ageless, formless, all perceiving, seeing clearly for the first time. Two dragonflies playing at the river. I found myself there. The wind in the trees, and I knew my true name. And then the breath is as effortless as the wind, because there is no more in and out. It breathes itself. I am not my thoughts, my judgments, my prejudice. I am that which knows them and is then free. Move a moment, awaken the body, climb back in, take a sip. And so I will ask again, who are you? Seeing clearly, seeing without bias, without identity, without prejudice, then who are you? And then we begin to see, don't we? I hope. Don't we begin to see that any characteristic is too limited? Can you feel it? Diana is tall. She has this kind of hair. She's a therapist. She lives in Leucadia. She's married to this guy. She has this many children. She went to this graduate school. She's from this ethnicity. And what happens? It diminishes then, doesn't it? It diminishes. And not only that, you know what's more interesting? You didn't live there. You didn't go to that school. You didn't marry that guy. You didn't have that number of children. You didn't become that career. You didn't. And so what do? Really, by holding ourselves like this, what do we immediately do? Not you. That's what we do. Not you. That's what we do. That's all it is, right? If I am this, what's the truth of it? Not you. Right? It creates an immediate problem. If only, not by itself, because no characteristics are just kind of interesting and fun. These earrings, right? This lipstick, this shirt, right? No problem. As long as we don't do what? This is the key. No problem. That picture, those books, that plant, no problem. We can call them as long as what? Asking the question, who am I? Via negativa, not this, not that, then what? Yes, Chris writes, I don't know anymore. A healthier place to be, Chris, than thinking you know that which is guaranteed, by the way, to do what? Change, as it does. And then what happens? When I'm not that strawberry blonde, what happens? Suffering, right? Difficulty, challenge, pain, loss. Now I have to what? Either try to secure it in some way, or I have to let go of that identity. Not just this hair, not just this hair color, not just this job, not just these teeth, not just these earrings. Where will I find me then? No clinging to the identities. Yes, it's useful, I think, however, to notice where we do cling, because I think the very seeing of that is awareness itself. Can I see where I grip? I have a mother who gets on the scale every single day. I'm certain it's why I don't. She gets on the scale every single day and goes, uh-oh, too much popcorn. Right? What will happen? Right? Then good day, bad day. Good weight, bad weight. Good job, good relationship, bad relationship. And now we're guaranteed to suffer. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be healthy. It doesn't mean you don't eat your greens. It doesn't mean you reduce your caffeine if you need to. This is the relative reality of our world, and not to be condemned, but be careful where we cling. Yes, no clinging, says Renee. The minute we do that, it is not in the characteristic itself that there is any inherent suffering. I do this and that. Then I don't do this and I don't do that. It is in the clinging, in the craving, in the wanting, in the not wanting, that the suffering resides. In the identity forming me like this, me to hold on to, this is where all suffering arises. And it says it is not even in the clinging, it's in the ignorance about it, that we never see where the truth of our suffering is. And so what do? We say life is the cause of my suffering. This life, this very gift, is the cause of my suffering. No, it is not. It is in the ignorance that you cannot keep it like this. Shivam writes, it's astounding the overlays of beliefs, isn't it? Opinions I've attached, yes. And releasing them during this meditation was so freeing. Yes, it is. And at the same time, yes, don't we get to honor the truth of the loss, because we have believed mistakenly that I am that. I am that. And yes, loss, when we've held those false identities for so long, we all struggle in its release. And that just gets to be a part of that reality. We don't have to lie. With loss comes grief. And it is a grief that we have constructed out of imagining that we should keep it. This is like it should last. If I got it right, if I did it correctly, if I ate the thing, if I exercised the thing, if I only thing, then, now, and then we suffer, and the guarantee is the suffering. But it is from the ignorance that we were clinging all along and not seeing the clinging. And the minute you see the clinging, by the way, you begin to become free. Oh, let me see if I can't just be with this. Can I appreciate it? Can I enjoy it? Can I love it? And can I let it go? Also, not contract. And at the same time, sad to see the contractions, yes. And the consequence, isn't it true, Shivam, of holding the weight, the burden, the demand, the impossibility, let's go there, of it. Youthful forever, beautiful forever, smart forever, good memory forever, something, right? Forever. Walking like this, or running like that, whatever it is, working, making a certain amount of money, having, relationship like this, family like this, health, right? Look where we cling. There. Let me let Shivam back in. I just saw she got kicked off. So are we getting this idea at all that if you don't investigate that bias, that preferencing in you, you will not be able to see and recognize it as you project it onto others? Does this make sense? Does this make sense to everyone? I'm going to look up because I got faces. Yeah, making sense. I'm going to keep looking because I want to see where we've got some no's going here. If you can't see your own bias, your own preference, your own clinging, and the ignorance around it, you cannot hope to then change the world. And this Real Change book is about what? Changing the world by doing what? You don't have to become a social activist. I thought that was the limit of the book, by the way. I thought it was an unfortunate limit to go. And so you've got to go out there and socially active. I think it's way harder. I think you have to make those changes right here in you, before you can make those changes out there. The change is here right now in you. And can we begin like this, seeing clearly? Oh, I had somebody visiting me. We were planting seeds. So this false statement, I'm a gardener. Yeah, it's a bit of a joke. I have great ground. It actually is true. The earth is gracious and abundant. And with a little bit of attention, you can do these amazing things, right? So I had someone at my house, and she brought her dog. I don't know this individual well. Doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter what her sex is. Doesn't matter what her gender is. Doesn't matter that it was a dog. It could have been a walrus. Doesn't matter. And my sister is a dog behaviorist and specialist. And this woman, who is particularly slight of body and weight, particularly so, you would say, the first thing she said to my sister upon my sister looking and smiling at the dog is, "Yeah, I know he needs to lose weight," she said. "Yeah, I know he needs to lose weight." It caught my sister completely off guard. And she went, "Actually, he's perfect. Actually, he's perfect. I know this breed, I know this dog, and actually he doesn't need to do anything. He's already perfect." And what a beautiful moment for me to see our own tendencies for projecting. She had projected what she feared right onto the dog in a way that wasn't even actually accurate. And don't we project, right? Remember what Joy Harjo said? "And you will become the thing you are judging, because you already are by having judged it. You already are that." Doesn't matter then, really, does it? The actual weight of you have already judged it. And so consequently see the judgment right through the lens of that judgment. You go, right here, here it is. Here it is. I'm going to look at chat and then we're going to go look at the chapter together. The comparisons questioning of our acceptance of with no comparison. Yeah, it's not very easy. I don't think we're very good at it. I'm not ascribing to that attempt. I think it's a false attempt. I think we made this mistake, for example, I was in college in the 70s. Yeah, I know. Half of you weren't born. I was in college in the 70s and we did the no color try. No color. Nobody had a color. We treat everybody like they had no color. Well, that was so violating also. This is what I mean about this no side taking. Watch the binary nature, because it's not true. No color is not true. And that you are only your color is not true. Right. And so it's a much bigger, more vast, deeper reality. I am not my body, and I want to attend to the body as well. And so there's not this or that is always the error. It is in the holding and in the knowing. When am I in comparison? This is useful. When am I not in comparison? How does that feel? When am I just in the allowing, just in the presence, just in the me like this, you like that? Can we both be here? That we can see, I think, more clearly. Yes, my hand on your heart and your hand on my heart, because there is no separate heart at all. Greg says, I can say I am not these identities, but the subconscious is clinging. Boy, Greg, don't we know it? I need to dive down deeper to open to the deep conditioning. This, I think, is actually our practice, Greg. I think it's essential. And I want you to know, let's not try for that globalized, everybody's the same. I think it's dangerous. I think we have to just first start here, recognizing our own habits, our own tendencies, our own bias, our own, like 10 pounds less could be better, maybe. And again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying notice the bias in it. Notice the proclivity. Notice the fact that I've had children. I worked with children my entire life. I've had parents bringing children in. I'm not going to name the gender, because they liked a certain color, or they liked a certain toy, or they didn't like certain clothing, or they didn't like certain shoes, and they like the other shoe better, and they like the other, right? And the way we begin to contract identities so early, these were young children, right? Into you've got to like pink, or you've got to like trucks, or you've got to like baseball, but you can't like science, and you've got to, right? And the way we all begin, and then socially, don't we impose like this? And then we go, I'm not happy. Well, you couldn't be, could you? You couldn't be happy because you don't even know who you really are. You know who you've been told, you know the allowances, you have been privileged, but who I really am would require discovery, would require what? Open space, would require opening to all possibilities. And then you might see, oh, right, like this or like that for now. Little funny story about this, and then we got to go look at the chapter. I was really horrible in math. I thought I was so horrible in math that I just stopped learning probably around sixth or seventh. I just didn't care anymore because I got told I was bad at math. And I got through high school, and my husband, of course, is a math expert. Yeah, we go find those people. I guess probably try to make me whole. I need a math guy because I'm not going to get through life like this. So I hook up with this math expert wizard kid sitting next to me in geometry, and he cheats. We cheat every single geometry test. He hands me his test. I cannot pass by cheating. He hands me the test and I try to copy it. Can't get it there either. The teacher at the end of the year goes, I'm going to give you both A's only because the truth was you couldn't help her at all. So neither could I. I mean, this was hopeless. By the way, none of it was true. It wasn't true that I wasn't good at math. It was true that I was afraid I wasn't. It was true that I quit because I was so afraid. And it wasn't until graduate school where they went, you're going to have to get through 2 years of these statistics no matter what, because we can't give you that one, no matter how funny you are, no matter how smart you are, this is not going to work out. And I became the statistics teaching assistant at the end because I had to learn finally. I had to open finally to the truth. And the truth was, though maybe not in other people's timeframes, maybe not in the curriculum the way they were teaching it, maybe not, I can't say. But what I can say is that it was actually never true. And how do we limit ourselves, really? How do we limit ourselves in these ways? By I am this and I am not this, in a way that isn't even close to the truth of who we really are. And we do both. Right? We cling to the I am and we reject, shut down, and close off to the I am not. And it's never quite true. So don't buy in and don't believe it. Let's go to the chapter for a little bit. This chapter is called Seeing More Clearly. Seeing more clearly. I'm hoping you can see this, though I'm suspecting maybe you can't. I can't see you guys, so I'm going to get up here and see if I can share this. I think you can see it now. Could somebody chat me that? Because I can't see you. Can you see it? I'm hoping. Okay. Thank you, Courtney. Seeing more clearly, here's what they have to say. We're going to just spend 10 minutes on this. It is a tendency towards bias, a way we have of distancing ourselves from others. Well, I don't think we begin there. I think we actually begin by distancing ourselves from ourselves. It is a tendency towards bias, a way we have of distancing ourselves from others also, right? Also, though we believe in the values, she says of this, we believe in loving thy neighbor, we believe in we are all equal, we believe in equality, justice. Really, the truth is, until we look more deeply at our tendencies towards our own bias, implicit bias is what it's called here, as you see in that other. How thoughts and feelings that reside beyond our consciousness, outside is a little limiting, beyond our consciousness, affects our perceptions, our judgments, our clear seeing, not seeing, our thoughts, and how we then act and live in the world. There's the riddle. How can this be that the father, if the father died, who was there? And she goes on to discuss this. The riddle's answer is simply that the surgeon is the child's mother. And we now know that that's limiting, don't we? That wasn't even true. Look at the falsity right there. That was the riddle, and it wasn't even accurate. It did not have to be the mother. There's infinite others that could have easily been, where someone could have claimed, this is my son. Could have been infinite others. And look at even the bias right there. It was the mother, because what did we bias? Well, moms and dads have sons. Not true. Not true. This was the other examples of what others it could be, but let's not limit it. That would be ridiculous. It could be infinite others. Look at how often we silently label, I'm going to stay with the word self / others, and plug ourselves and them into categories for our own devising, for our own self and otherness. Like me, not like me. Mine tribe, not my tribe. My people, not my people. And the beginning of separating from the more holistic reality of our world and our life. It restricts our sense of identity, any of those labels actually, and narrows our experience of life by them. Tunnel vision. Boom. I don't see those who are not like me. I only see those who I perceive to be like me. The brain stem says so. Tom Cousins, Mr. Biology, would agree with us, wouldn't you, Tom? We tend by nature to turn, the eye even goes to that which looks like itself for comfort, that which it knows for comfort, that which it knows for breeding, that which it knows for bonding, that which it knows, then we could say, for what? Survival. Except this is no longer sufficient. It was necessary, useful, and infinitely valuable, and no longer sufficient. We cannot inhabit this world with these projections. Filled with shadows and ghosts, bred in the mind. I loved that line. We start to inhabit a world of mental pictures, projections, filled with shadows and ghosts. Judgments, perceptions, limits, boundaries, false barriers built in our own minds for our own safety and comfort and unfortunate falsity, security. Doctors prescribed, I was terrified by this, lower doses of pain meds for people of darker skin. I'm not sure what that's about, but it was terrifying to me when I read that. I did not ever have that information, but don't we? Yes. And so what we do know, and we know today, is that doctors will prescribe less pain meds for people they perceive to be of lower socioeconomic status. They will, that is true. They will prescribe less based on male bias to women. We do know those things to be true. That race beyond socioeconomic was a factor. I did not know that. It's vitally important that we hold assumptions up to the light in awareness. Yes, because there are real consequences to mindlessly living by them. Deadly consequences, war-making consequences, aggression, violence consequences as a result. One of our more prevalent patterns of assumption is attribution error, in which we identify members of our own tribe as good and the thing that is not familiar, not known, not comfortable as something bad. We tend to attribute the behavior to situational factors rather than to dispositional. If members of the enemy tribe do the same thing, we're more likely to explain the behavior as their bad character, as their bad people, as their habit nature. They're just lazy like that. They just don't like to work like that. And you've heard this in your lifetime. And when it's, of course, in our own tribe, what do we say? Bad circumstance, tough circumstance. That's that situational factor. We assign it to the person and to the peoples when they are from the other tribe, and we know this habit. We know this habit. We do the same with ourselves. By the way, the same bias exists. How is it so? We tend to over-attribute ourselves. The reason that went well was me. The reason it worked out was because of my skill, because of my ability, because of my contribution. We over-attribute as it relates to self, and we minimize attribution as it relates to other. They didn't work as hard. They didn't study as hard. They didn't have to something as much as I did. And we minimize. That's also not true typically, by the way. This separation perception causes pain both to ourselves because we're not open to the realities of ourselves and others. And it also limits because then we tend to misattribute. We're not seeing it clearly at all. So to see more clearly, it says, to help dissolve the grip of habit, of stereotyping, profiling, attribution bias, leading to a cleaner, clearer view of what we are encountering and of various possible resolutions. A principle of mindfulness training is that clearly seeing our assumptions will deconstruct them. Yes. Seeing our assumptions, our bias, our prejudice, our preference, these are all a part of the same thing, will begin to set us free and deconstruct them, because that which you see, you can see as an object rather than as an attribution. We can hold it out to the light. Assumptions as thoughts. And I see everything in that way. Isn't it useful to come to see everything as simply an assumption rather than as an essential truth? We then have room enough to question our assumptions instead of filling all mental space with reactivity and what I'll call evidence finding. With reactivity, the minute we go into reactivity, first of all, we're no longer present. We are now just in habit nature for fight, flight, fix, freeze. And we have a tendency then to only see through the eyes of that reactivity, which is evidenced bias, to validate your projection, to validate your belief, to validate your affirmation, not to see the essential whole of the reality. So if you believe people like that do this, you are going to find your evidence for it. It's guaranteed. You will not be able to see, however, the truth for the evidence against it because you aren't looking. We do the same with ourselves. My math example, because I believed I was not capable, I could not see, did not risk the possibility of failure by turning towards it. I just shut it down. And this is what we do. She goes on to talk about the woman who actually, as it turned out, was quite knowledgeable and scholarly, and how she looked like plain or frumpy or whatever words they were using, and how we notice. Do we not notice this? We only notice it when the evidence is so glaring that we can no longer avoid it. This has happened any number of times for all of us as we what? Sit next to a stranger, form immediate opinion, perception about them, even maybe already begin to react by going, I'm going to stay silent. I'm going to turn slightly this other way. I'm going to get into my book. I'm right, separation. And then, not by virtue too often of us and our wisdom, but sometimes the other or circumstance, we connect and meet the other and go, oh my God, those six spaces of separation don't even exist, right? They were from that same town. They had the same blah, blah. They loved blank like you did. They loved one of my first encounters with this was a gentleman who sat next to me at a Jack Cornfield conference and looked dramatically other from my point of view. And we had to do a shared dyad exercise. And he loved music in exactly the way I did. He loved similar types of music. We went on to talk about Dave Matthews for an hour. He knew Dave. I wanted to go home with him because I wanted to know Dave too. It was a very amazing interconnection, but it was a beautiful opportunity for me because I was sitting there thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to go into a dyad with this other. And this is going to be challenging. And in fact, we have all had infinite examples of how we get to wake up, don't we, in this way by discovering where the bias really was and what was true and mostly not true about it. It's also kind. We don't have to judge ourselves for these thoughts and feelings. We have to acknowledge the bias. We have to recognize our wish for comfort, security, protection, and safety as being true of all of us. But we don't have to alter reality as a way towards it because we realize it's our involvement with the problem. It's our involvement. The problem is, of course, most in ourselves, and that bias in ourselves that we then take out and project into the world. I'm going to look at chat for a second just to make sure. Yes, I agree with Greg. 60 years of clinging to subconscious. Yeah, clinging. That's a lot to look at. I will need to do a lot of self-compassion, breathe. Yes, this is exactly right. And without the compassion, we better not look because we're going to see the reality of the bias there. We already know it. You just have to pay attention to where you contract. You just have to pay attention to the assumptions that get vaulted like cannon balls over the bow most of your day. Believed thoughts, I call them, about the self and other. We're going to be looking at that this week. Believed thoughts, can we catch them? If you can't catch them in the self, do the job of naming them as you catch them in the other. And it's a little fun to go, what's my belief storyline about this other? And actually name a few attributions. What are you assigning to this other? I'm giving them not too smart. I'm giving them struggling in life because they never developed a career. I'm giving them, they probably don't have a partner because they don't dress very well. And I'm making this up. And then remember, turn that attribution right back around. So what is it I fear? I fear if I'm not smart enough, if I don't have a good career, if I don't dress well enough, if I'm not something enough or something enough, I will not be okay. That's the truth. And I have judged myself and am now judging the other by the same standards, always, even when you think it's not true. Fortunately, when we're committed to addressing the stubborn injustices and seemingly intractable problems of the world, and we are not bound by so many assumptions, but you've got to see them first. Remember, we cannot undo that which we do not recognize. We have to see the knot to untie it. We have the chance to look at deeper patterns in our minds and in how the world works. The good-heartedness I cultivate can be joined with clarity and creative vision about where to try to make change. I don't want to rush to the change because I think until we see clearly, all rushing to change can be superficial. And that's why I don't want us to just now go, now I see everyone the same. Now everybody's one. Yes, it is true in the absolute sense. And you are carrying bias that I want you to recognize. I don't want you to abandon the bias because in fact, we can't deconstruct it that way. We have to deconstruct by first seeing the knot, by first seeing the reactivity, by first seeing the assumptions, by first recognizing our habit-natured storylines. And from there, turning back with compassion, said Renee, towards oneself and untie that bound knot of self-story. If I am not something, I cannot be okay in oneself. And then we create space and room, vast space, room, and awareness for the other. The multi-layered effects of our bias was the other end of this chapter, where it said it is not sufficient to just feed someone. It is essential that we look at what are the underlying conditions and causes that result in that hunger, that result in that poverty, that result in that prejudice. And often until we address many of those underlying causes, we cannot truly eradicate. And so said the Buddha, which is you cannot get rid of the thought or the prejudice and think this is sufficient. You have to look at what was the resting place for and the conditions for these believed thoughts. What is it? And often it was stories handed to us, believed thoughts handed to us, legacies of prejudice handed to us that we as children and then beyond simply took on. And sometimes it says to imagine a single cause and then addressing just that is not only insufficient, at times it can cause more damage. And I really mean that. And I'll give you an example next week of Australia and the cane toad and how they really made a mess of their country by just finding one, what they believe, one simple solution to the mosquito, and actually have now several more and much larger problems. Our tendency to hang hope and expectations on a single savior with a magic cure, just like the cane toad, rather than expand our thinking and efforts more deeply. I think we're going to have to stop there. I will mark this so I know where we're at. So the practice this week is going to, in fact, be to begin to look at our storylines and see if you can be a little bit playful. I'd like you to just look at somebody you don't know and go, what's my story? What's my story about them? It's a little, we can have a little fun rather than get into some kind of stoic or dour practice, or what's my storyline about them? And then remember, my interest is not only that you smile at the story, don't believe it, you're recognizing the storyline. Then I want you to turn that back towards yourself and say, what of that storyline have I actually unconsciously been holding about me? What part of that story that I've projected now onto this perceived other am I actually wearing, holding, and believing about me? That people who don't have careers are lazy. Well, maybe I believe that about myself. Maybe that's why I work so hard. Maybe that's why I am never going to stop working, right? That we begin an inquiry as it relates to the self. What are the believed thoughts that I am holding, not only against the other, but against the self? I'm going to check chat and then we'll say goodbye. Biases have survival value. Yes. Yes, color and perception, knowing we look through colored lenses, it's so key, can adjust our interpretation to account for the bias. Yes, Tom, actually acknowledging the bias is better than trying to falsely, superficially get rid of it. It's not a practice I will support because I understand too well its limits. So let's not do that. I will write this in the summary for you. We will get this up on the encinitasmindfulness.org site under Real Change. I think let's come back to Real Change next week and really talk about these storylines and where they've come from. Where have we gotten them? What was the fear that helped us construct them? Another key question. What fear forms the storyline about that perceived other and oneself? I'll look forward to going over that with you. Let's not run to chapter 8. We have a little time. I would like you all to begin to look for the book, A Whole Life Path by Gregory Kramer, a friend. I thought he did an exquisite job. This is going to be a big read. This is going to take us a little longer, but I would like you to begin to take a look at it. Just check it out. I thought it was self-published, though I do know they do have it available on Amazon. Second book I'm going to recommend is by Judd Brewer, who I think the name of that book, I've just ordered it, is called Unwire Anxiety. I love Judd. I love his research. I love his writing. The book Unwire, I believe it's called Anxiety, book I'm really looking forward to also reading. And we'll talk about that some other time too. Thank you all. Thank you so much for being patient and taking this a few extra moments of time together. I will look forward to reviewing more of chapter 7. More of chapter 7. We are going to talk about the biases that we've discovered, what we've noticed about them, and the consequence that you notice as you came into recognition of them during the week. All right, everyone, be well. Blessings to you all. And may this practice and the informal practice we've just defined for this week, may it be a benefit. All right, everyone, be well. I'll look forward to seeing you on Thursday. I will be doing Thursday morning sitting at 7 a.m. Greg is on a beautiful travel. I'm so happy about that. And then I will see you again Saturday morning at 7:30. All right. Be well, everyone.